Could you tell us your name?
Sure, it's Sonie. I live here in Portsmouth.
Have you lived here your whole life?
Most of my life. I was born and raised here, and I left for college, and I left for my first employment, and was the only one in my family that wasn't coming back, and I'm the only one in my family that came back. And I didn't plan to come back. It was just a small town story. I met somebody who owned a company, and they said, "Hey, would you come work for us?" And it was so easy. I've been all over the country, and people that have never been anywhere but here think it's so awful, and the people here are nice, and of course there's always home is always home. So I just fell into it, and it was so much easier and laid back compared to the job I'd been doing. And so then I met my husband, and here we are. And I'm a happier Scioto County resident because I've lived other places. You always think the grass is greener, if you don't know any other thing. Not to say we don't have our problems and everything, but, the grass isn't always greener. So.
Well, I know you came in to talk to us about your involvement with the Red Cross. How did you get sort of started with the Red Cross?
Sure. Well, I've always been a blood donor. I was a blood donor because my dad felt really strongly about donating blood. He's been actually acknowledged for gallons and gallons. I mean, he's got a ton. So that's how I got first started with the Red Cross, was back in high school when you could give blood, and so I always did. When I moved back to Portsmouth, it wasn't long after that a previous executive director approached me about being a board member, and so he gave me some information to learn about the Red Cross, and I was probably most surprised at that time to learn that the Red Cross wasn't a government-funded agency. And one thing led to another. I started serving on the board, and so that's really how it came to be.
As a member of the board, what sort of things would you do?
Well, I did a number of things. Started out just really with my time, learning, serving on committees of the board, Human Resources Committee, fundraising, that type of thing, and then over time progressed to the chairperson of the board. So, and really the Red Cross board is made up of a fabulous group of people who really have the opportunity to work together and share resources that they bring to the table. And so even if you serve on a specific committee or two, it often is all interrelated, and you hear at board meetings updates, and you say, "Hey, do you know this person, or we could do that for you," or so you really get the opportunity to see how everything works, regardless of whether you serve on a specific committee. So.
You mentioned the committees. What kind of committees are active right now?
Well, I'm not currently on the board. I had to. I actually when the local chapter was between executive directors, I was one of the few board members that had any experience or longevity with the board, and so we have term limits that are prescribed by the national charter, and I got sort of special permission to extend those term limits because there really was no one else no one with experience or longevity. So I stepped down off the board because I was way over my term limits, and so today I'm not a good person to ask what are the board, because it's changed a little bit. primarily you have fundraising, you have um, human resources if you need it, you have governance, so making sure that all your bylaws are compliant. As a chapter, you're part of one Red Cross, so there's a national organization, and they've really done a great job in recent years at the national level to really share a consistent, not only message, because I think the Red Cross has tried really hard through the years to have a consistent message, but a consistent structure, board structures throughout the organization that support the local chapter. When you're a local chapter, you're often, even though you're part of a larger organization, you're often left to your own devices. And I say that from, for instance, Scioto County has a huge number of single-family fires. And even a region, we're part of the Cincinnati-Dayton region here, you may not see nearly, in fact, you don't see nearly as many single-family fire disasters, maybe over towards Cincinnati or in Dayton like you see in Scioto County. So how that impacts this chapter from a resource standpoint, both people and financial resources, is very different than what you might see in a different chapter. But the One Red Cross structure now is much more supportive. It's extremely supportive, and really I think it's helped the Red Cross nationally and internationally be more focused, use their resources wisely, meet the needs of more people. So to answer your question, back to what are the board, I would ask a current board member to expound on that. I'm a past board member, and now I just volunteer my time, and I serve on the fundraising committee now. That's a committee of the board. Have fun with that.
I understand that you sort of were on the board and very instrumental during a time that was really troubling for this particular chapter. Is that something that you'd be comfortable talking about?
Yeah, and I think people need to, I think it's one of the reasons that I continue to support the chapter with my time, and I'm a financial supporter as well. Back at that time when we were without an executive director, we'd had some turnover, and it was really a difficult time because we are tasked in this chapter with so many disasters, not just single family fires, but if there's any kind of heat issue or cold issue, opening shelters and keeping blood drives going, and so there's a lot that goes on here that may not be apparent to a lot of people. But because the board is a volunteer board, those of us who were serving in that capacity, we had real jobs too. I mean, we had full-time jobs, and then we were tasked with trying to keep the chapter viable. So it was very difficult for all of us involved, and I think what really was the turning point for me was when there were members of the board who said, we can't do this on our own. And I did an analysis. I looked at all the services that we were providing at the American Red Cross. I looked at all the services that other social service type agencies might be providing. And that could be, I looked at the Salvation Army. I looked at the churches. I looked at the United Way and other agencies that they fund. Just anybody and everybody that I could think of that may touch people in need. And then I looked at where those needs crossed paths with what the Red Cross was doing. And it's kind of like when you do a product analysis. Does this product have this? And you check, and this, and this. And so you see what what needs wouldn't be met without the Red Cross. And there were some vital needs that no one else in the community was meeting. And without the Red Cross, there would be no one else to meet those needs. And when I saw it in black and white, when I did that comparison, I saw that in black and white, that's when I decided we can't let this fail. These things will go away, and that wasn't acceptable to me. I also, Mary asked me at one point, she said, did you feel like your reputation was on the line? And I said, well, I'd be lying if I didn't say, I don't want people to go back in history and say, yeah, there used to be a Red Cross chapter, but when Sonie Hash was the director, it closed its doors. So I said, there was part of that. I have my pride. I was like, I don't want it to fail on my watch. But it was really when I put it in black and white, and I did the analysis, and I just said, we can't let this happen. And when we found Mary, it was an answer to prayer. Really, bring me the right person who I can share my enthusiasm, my passion for the mission of the Red Cross in this community. And Mary was a great fit. And I think when Mary took the job, it was a job, and she has developed a passion. I mean, I think in different ways, but she sees the difference. She sees the mission of our local chapter and how vitally important it is. And, she's a great face for our local chapter because she's a hard worker, highest level of integrity. She's great with working with all different kinds of people. So, not everybody brings the same skill set to the equation, but she does an excellent job finding, what your skill set is and mixing it with this and really getting great outcomes. And because the local community supports this chapter financially, I think it's a testament to her skills and ability that we're still here. She's convinced other people that this is a good thing to support, and people support it. So, she has developed a great team. This is a board that people want to serve on, because it's a really great organization, and they do really good work, and they gather the data and they show the outcomes. Okay, if you give us X amount of dollars, here's what we're going to do with it. And then at the end of the year, we could say, here's how many of this particular segment we served, which is also a great thing about the Red Cross. If your thing is blood, or your thing is supporting the military, or your thing is fire prevention, or serving people who are affected by fires or natural disasters. I mean, I can go on and on, but you can, whatever is important to you, you have an avenue for that in the Red Cross. So.
How do you think that the Red Cross, in the time that you were involved with it, the local chapter changed?
Well, I think, at one time, the Red Cross was an organization that people wanted to support, and then we had some turnover. We didn't have all the right people, on the team, and support dropped. I think some of our service levels weren't as high as they needed to be. And then, and at the national organization, over the last 10 years, has struggled with how to become more transparent, more unified, how to be able to have little chapters like the Ohio River Valley chapter be a viable part of a larger organization. So the national organization has gone through changes and development, and during that time there was turnover at national. There were some national leadership changes that happened in a small window, and that causes upheaval, that causes unrest, that causes donors to say, I don't know if I want to throw my financial support that way. But Gail McGovern is the national organization leader, and she's done a fabulous job. I think she's taken some concepts that other national leaders were getting there. It's been a process, and she was able to learn from things that maybe didn't work out so well, and she's refined the process. And the One Red Cross is really much stronger. The other thing is, if you think back to the nature of our natural disasters anymore, who could have ever dreamed of an event like 9/11? Not only that, think of our tsunamis, and who knew what a tsunami was? If that happened, it certainly didn't happen in the lifetime of the people involved today. These huge earthquakes have been happening, but now you have people who live and who have built nuclear reactors in locations where you're having these huge, you almost can't think out there broad enough to think of every potential. Okay, so when these things happen and the Red Cross is called in, the Red Cross has had to really be responsive in a huge, huge way. The hurricanes that displaced all the people in Louisiana, and how that's continued to evolve. I don't think that's a negative, how you respond, I don't think is a negative reaction. It's not realistic in some of these cases for agencies to know the huge scope. Now, we've gotten better, and I think that's a credit to the Red Cross. You live and you learn and you change your processes and you develop resources that you didn't know you needed to have. But so that, it's all, I really, the national organization is doing a great job.
How have you seen our local chapter impact our community?
Oh my. What's interesting? One of the neatest ways that we see, I know people stop into the chapter, but one of the neatest ways that we see how the chapter impacts people is when they do a street collection. People come through and they'll give their whole ashtray full of change, and it's when they say, oh, this is all I have, but I want you to have it because you helped my, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, fill in the blank. We have people who have made financial donations, when they've been able to. We've had people who are in a position, for instance, we've had attorneys who have said, I read about what you did for a family. I have a client who wants to make a donation and doesn't know what to do, and I read about how you helped use this financial donation for your disaster services. the fact that the Red Cross continues to grow and thrive here, I think, is a testament. I think it's why people keep doing what they do, is because not everybody has a chance to say thank you, but lots of people do. When we connect up military families, at a big event, a birth, a passing of a loved one, they're very grateful. They're very grateful, and Mary gets, cards. People feel like, oh, we all like to, we tend to focus on the negative, and we don't necessarily take the time always on the positive, but then something will happen. Well, let me tell you how this happened. Or, the person, the Red Cross has worked with the local firefighters and the volunteer, not only paid, but volunteer staff, to install smoke detectors. How many people buy a smoke detector that's sitting on the counter because they have to get out a ladder and you have to put it up, and that's a collaborative effort, and people say thank you and they comment, and it's one of the most frustrating things that we see here when somebody has a fire and they don't have a working smoke detector, or if somebody perishes from a fire because they didn't have that extra minute or so that a smoke detector might have afforded them an opportunity to get out. So.
What are some of the things that surprised you that the Red Cross does? I know just from doing these interviews, I've learned a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, my biggest surprise way back when was when I found out that the Red Cross was not funded by the government. The government, they called on the Red Cross to respond to these disasters, and because I had always been a blood donor and thought the Red Cross was A-OK, you see the news reports and you say the Red Cross is coming in and everything. So I just assumed incorrectly that this was a government agency. That was my biggest surprise about the Red Cross. One of my other big surprises has been the number of single-family fires in our region compared to other regions, and shows why we've spent some time and energy trying to connect with the fire departments, trying to access resources where people can not only get the smoke alarm, but get it installed. So when you look at our numbers, that's always a surprise. When you look at how many things our chapter does compared to some chapters that are, 10 times the size and have resources 10 times what we do. I'm not surprised that we're able to do more with less. I think that's part of our culture. We're used to stretching to make ends meet. But that was my biggest surprise. I knew about education, CPR, swim lessons, those kinds of things. I knew about blood services. At the time that I joined the board, I was surprised a little, about how chapters were way more on their own. But again, I've seen over my history with the Red Cross is how national has worked to envelop them, and they've done a really good job. So the government funding thing is the biggest surprise.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should, or that you want to make sure people know?
Well, oftentimes people donate money without checking is this really a great use of my dollar? And so I feel very confident when I say this local chapter is a great place to direct your resources. It's a very welcoming environment. If you don't have, not everybody has extra money to support a chapter financially, but it's a great welcoming location if you're looking for a place to give some of your time. It's also a great location if maybe you have some talent, something that oftentimes people want to get involved but they don't know how, and this is a great organization to connect you with a way to whatever you want to do. Certainly, who doesn't want your money, but it doesn't have to be all about money. So that's what I want people to know. This is it's just a great welcoming organization that has lots of needs, lots of ways that you can be a part of the mission, even if you don't have financial resources. So, I guess that's it.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.